mentioned off the top of the show, there is breaking news out of the Ukraine this hour as the president and opposition leaders reach a truce. We requested Ukraine's ambassador. He was not available, but the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress president is here. Paul Grod joins us from our studio in downtown Toronto. Welcome to the show, Paul. Quickly on this thing, I don't know, do you put any faith in this truce lasting past sunset or sunrise, should I say?
This president has promised and broke his promise time and time again. It was really only insiders in Ukraine are telling us that this truce was only brokered because of intense international pressure this afternoon, where we had the presidents of the United States, European countries, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, John Baird, putting intense international pressure on the Ukrainian president because he was getting ready to crack down and take down the peaceful protesters tonight on the Maidan.
Okay, we're seeing live shots from Kiev. It's still in flames and looks like a very dire situation. I know over 25 people have died so far. But Paul, if you could give me an idea here of what the Canadian-Ukrainian community believes the government could or should do on this. So far, there's a bit of medical aid going forward, and we've kind of blacklisted a few key officials from coming into Canada. What more could we be doing and should we be doing?
Well, I think the Canadian government has been probably one of the most outspoken governments on the situation in Ukraine. They went further than any other country in terms of introducing travel bans and sanctions on very senior Ukrainian government officials right from the top, unlike other countries. And they're in serious discussions with their American and European partners about imposing financial sanctions. We're talking about a government that's run by a kleptocracy. They've all become billionaires, and the only way that they're going to actually be forced to come to the table and negotiate a settlement if they know that they're not going to be able to access their billions that they've hidden offshore. And so Canada is taking an important role there. You mentioned medical support as well. And what's very important is we are discussing with the Canadian government about a international multilateral monitoring mission in Ukraine in order to observe, document, and report on the human rights abuses in Ukraine, which will eventually be used as evidence in an international human rights tribunal, which will hopefully bring justice to the people that have suffered by these human rights abuses in Ukraine.
Oh, that's interesting. Did you get a warm response to that suggestion from the government?
Absolutely. Yesterday I was in meetings for most of the day with the Department of Foreign Affairs, and they were very receptive to these plans. We're trying to be proactive. We're trying to figure out ways that the international community can, in fact, force the president of Ukraine to sit down with and negotiate a settlement with the opposition and the protesters in the Maidan. It's very interesting to point out that the protesters is not a political protest. Essentially, it is a protest of the people, and that's why the leadership of this Maidan of the protesters needs to also be included in these negotiations.
I guess the concern here I'm wondering about, you see Ukraine's president inking a deal with Russia, closer economic ties there. You often wonder if they've already gone too far to start backpedaling now, because I'm not sure Russian President Putin will let them go back to the way it was before, will he?
Well, Don, that's the most troubling part of all of this. We see that the Ukrainian president has been emboldened by the support from Putin. Putin has made statements today calling on those peaceful protesters that were mercilessly shot and beaten in protest yesterday. He referred to them as extremists, as terrorists, that they should be put down. And so the president of Ukraine is either being told and pushed to do this by the Russian president, or feels emboldened that he can actually create an authoritarian state like Putin has done in Russia, like Lukashenko has done in Belarus, what's happened in Kazakhstan. That's the real scary part, is that Russia is playing another Assyrian card, where he's supporting the authoritarian regime of Viktor Yanukovych. And that's really where Canada, the US, and the Europeans really need to step up their game and really come to pull Ukraine back towards a democratic state.
Last point on this, I was reading some analysts that say this thing only has two possible outcomes: civil war or a complete and brutal military crackdown. You don't sound very optimistic about that truce going forward. Are those the options we could be facing here?
I don't think so. I think that First of all, in terms of civil war, just to be clear, this isn't an East versus West. This isn't an issue. This isn't a struggle between two different groups of society. It's not civil war. It's a war of the people versus the government. We're talking about a government that's a kleptocracy that wants to stay in power and continue to be able to steal from its people, and they're trying to stay in power. So it's a question of a war of the people versus the government. The people will prevail. The Ukrainian people are not going to be put down. We see that more people have swelled onto the streets, even though they know that there is a risk of being violently attacked, of being killed. But people will not, and we're hearing from the people on the street who are saying, you know what, this is about my children. I refuse to have my children live in an authoritarian state that is controlled by a person like Viktor Yanukovych, who continues to steal and completely disrespect any regard for the people and for human rights.
Good point. All right, let's hope this has a satisfactory ending. We appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Liberals were too polite to attack the government in yesterday's sunny video, but the Baby Dippers seem to think that's too wimpy. The NDP youth kicked out a Harper-bashing video today, and our strats decide which party has a better idea. That's just ahead. Please stay with us.